Hey, I'm Chris Leier, the sixth son of Carl and Mary Leier. We grew up in Kintyre, North Dakota.
I'm Viola Leier, and I'm the daughter of Andrew and Mary and chores. We always had to milk cows and feed the cattle and the calves, wash the separator, separate the milk and cream, a babysitter at the house with the boys.
Is that something you liked?
I liked to play around with them. Well, there was Gilbert, Perry, Joe, not so much Al, and Myron, Marty. We had to carry all the water in the house and carry it out again, and a lot of work when that was washed in.
I don't know, I think maybe growing up with the rest of the family, you know, and doing the chores like everybody else had to do, you know, milking the cows until we had a milking machine, of course. We were probably the first ones in the area to have an automatic milking machine, so that helped quite a bit. Then, of course, as we got older, we were doing field work. I never did do much with the horses, but got to plow with a two-bottom plow and a little Ellis Chalmers tractor and a International A tractor. And we had an older brother that was there with us, so he did all the heavy lifting, I guess I could say. I suppose the field work was probably the favorite. You know, getting out and sitting on the tractor and going back and forth in the fields and plowing, turning the black dirt over so somebody could come along and plant. I suppose the milking was probably the worst part, you know. Before we had machines, we would hand milk. You know.
Yeah. Did you like hauling rocks?
I'm not sure. That was just one thing you had to do, I guess. You didn't have a chance to like it or not. I never did know my Leier grandparents. But the Schatz grandparents, we used to go and visit them in Sealand, North Dakota. Grandpa was Andreas Schatz and Grandma was Barbara. Probably get down there before Mass started Sunday mornings. My brother and I remember sitting in the front pew at the church, and then after Mass, we always went to Grandma and Grandpa for, you know, lunch or whatever it was. Sometimes I suppose there was maybe some cousins around too. So I don't remember my Schatz grandparents ever at the farm where we grew up. I don't know if they ever were there or not. I really don't know.
I don't remember Grandma Schmidt because she died so young, and so did my Grandpa Schmidt. But my grandma chose I remember real well. But I can't remember much from my Grandpa chose because he died so young from diabetes. Well, Hannah Chose was Grandma Chose. And Grandpa, I don't even remember?
John.
John?
John.
Oh, I remember when I made my first Holy Communion. I couldn't remember all the little girls that went or the boys, but they were all my age. See, those were kids that just went to the church. So I enjoyed that.
I suppose the most important thing that I remember is that I served. I was an altar server at that time, and we didn't have the English at that time yet, so we were all mea culpa guys had to do the Latin for being able to serve Mass. And, you know, going to catechism 4 weeks out of the year, I suppose, during the summer months, usually first part of June. We lived about 1.5 miles from the school that we attended, and you know, it was all the grades were there, from the first to the 8th. You know, so we got to know all those, you know, school classmates, I guess you'd call them. You know, recess, driving to school with the horse and buggy. You know, later on maybe got taken with the car maybe. But the school was 1 mile south and 1/2 mile west. Maybe I should have said 1/2 mile west and 1 mile south. It was pretty close to where our neighbor John Wangler lived.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did you have any favorite subjects when you were in school?
No, not really, I guess. Did pretty well in all of them, so I wasn't really too concerned. I think I even skipped a couple of grades where I was moved ahead. Yeah, I was out of the 8th grade. I think I was probably only about 12 years old. So that went really fast for me, I guess.
I remember it was only 7 months out of a year. That's all we had.
Yeah.
But then we had 2 weeks of refreshing, come back and study before we wrote the test.
Yeah.
And if you missed more than 35 days, you had to take it over. We had to bring our own lunch. And sometimes when it was too cold, we could bring a potato and put a potato in with the ashes and bake it. And that's what we had for lunch. And we survived.
Well, our school had the outhouses, the his and hers outhouses, I guess I'd have to say. And we had a barn for the horses, you know. And with that, with those outhouses, I think there was a little bit of a storage shed in between. Pretty nice setup for the time that it was, you know, for the area that we were in. Well, I had been out of school maybe 2 or 3 years before I went to the prep seminary. My parents were some good friends of John Richter's, and one of their boys was attending Crozier, and I think that was the connection that my parents had with the Crozier Seminary. So I think they just enrolled me, and that was it. I went to school there 1 year. Kind of enjoyed it, you know. Came back and forth with the bus. Got picked up at Dawson, North Dakota. The camaraderie and, you know, it was all boys, you know. It wasn't, you know, pretty good classmates. Yeah. You get to know a few people, you know.
You said you only went 1 year. Why was that?
Well, I think the pressure at home was so great for workers. Other than that, I don't know. I even had left my books down there. Wanting to go back, I think. But, you know, when you're 15, 16-year-old, you're not, you're at the mercy of your parents, you know. Just part of life at that time.
Okay.
You don't go back to school and you just keep on working.
What were you doing when after 8th grade when you didn't go to school?
Anything that that we had to do. I even was on the hay stack. Help move hay home. Then I was at home till I got married. I was all in Bismarck once before we got married. They used to drive together, you know, so nobody from the kids got to go along.
I remember going to Bismarck quite often, I think. A lot of stores that aren't there anymore that we used to go and see. That was before the mall days. I think 4th of July probably was one of the ones that we got to go into Napoleon. And the church holiday that I remember the most was the feast day of the parish. We went to church at St. Boniface, and I think, if I remember right, that feast day is maybe around June 5th or something like that. Nowadays, we don't celebrate those anymore, so you kind of forget the days, but it used to be a big thing. People would come from different parishes. They'd get invited to come for dinner, and it was a big deal, our parish feast.
I feel they need it. I just felt they needed school more than the work at home. They can do the work when they come home after school. That you didn't have to keep them out of school all day.
I didn't get the education that I would have liked, so why deny it for somebody else that you're responsible for?
They all had good grades. They knew that they needed school.
Most of them have really done well for themselves, and we're certainly proud of that, you know. We used to have a guy come around and play Santa Claus and whatever, knock on the windows and made sure that you saw him coming.
We got a gift from Santa Claus, and that was it.
As youngsters, we were all pretty much scared of Santa Claus at that time. It's not like nowadays, you know.
There wasn't such a thing as celebrating Thanksgiving. We butchered pigs because we didn't have school, so we could help. Well, we have a family dinner, which most of them enjoyed. See that they all get a gift. Well, I'd still admire my Aunt Sally. She calls me once a week, you know, and she's the only aunt that I have left, and I admire her. She does good.
I think when you talk about people that you remember, probably your 4-H leaders, your county agent, and those kind of people, you know. Back in I think maybe about 54, I was elected to go to 4-H Congress in Chicago, Illinois, which I enjoyed, you know. And Westinghouse Electric Award, you know, state award. A lot of friendships made at that time, but you know, you kind of lose track of them. We didn't really grow up with the volleyball and and some of that stuff that they do nowadays, even after school. You know, they enjoy going to those things, I guess. We played kind of a softball that we get. Different churches had softball teams, played softball with some of those people. I enjoyed doing model airplanes and smaller models. And then I got into that one that was supposed to have been flyable, but you had to be better than I was to fly an airplane. So get it up in the air and you don't control the right controls and then you smash it into the ground. That's the end of the session then.
I did sewing and embroidering. We help Ma clean up the garden.
Well, we went to the same church, went to catechism classes together. We got to know each other.
I met him at the church or the religious school. Went to school there. And who else could we meet? I mean, that's the only place we got was the church. And to, you know, like the 4th of July, we got to go to town.
I think we roller skated too at Napoleon on Sunday nights. I used to enjoy roller skating. That was something to do on a Sunday evening, you know. A lot of teenagers did that.
I'll tell you one thing. There was no telephone. We couldn't hang on the telephone and call them. We first got them after we got married.
I knew her brother Leo really well from 4-H and stuff. And so start going to their house and the rest is history, I suppose.
Do you remember when he asked you to marry him?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
At our house? But I was 20 years old by then.
I think her folks were trying to get rid of her.
What do you remember about your wedding day?
It was a long day.
Yeah?
Church started at 10. Then we had a dinner. Then after dinner they played, we danced in the afternoon. If you wanted to dance, you had to pay the accordion. The guy that plays the accordion, you had to give him so much money, then he'd play. There wasn't such a thing that the parents had to pay the orchestra. The whole wedding had to pay.
I don't know so much about lunchtime, but during the dinner in the evening, uh, certain people would go around with plates, and people would donate money
For the cooks,
for the cooks, and
you know. We couldn't invite our friends. They invited their friends, the parents. We were always with Tony, Mary Lou. We weren't allowed to invite them. That wasn't those days. The kids didn't have anything to say.
the first night we stayed at Bismarck, and then from there we drove pretty much out to the Badlands and back again. You know, it's only a couple of days, you know. No Hawaii or anything like that.
Well, I remember went out to the Badlands. But we only had so many days, so we could all, then we had to be home
Where did you live after you got married?
with his folks.
Yeah, we just did farm work. Viola, I think, helped Grandma, well, which was my mother,
Right.
you know. We stayed there quite a few years, till 1959, till we moved over into Emmons County.
Did you have to take a loan out to buy that land, or how did you get that property?
Yeah, there was a guy that wanted to sell it, and he came and talked to my parents, and they bought the property, and we moved, and later on, we bought what we didn't get from my parents, we bought from my parents then. I can't really say what my dad paid for that property. I think it was 1,100 acres,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
That's a pretty big farm for back in the day.
That was, yeah. Well, we raised the typical grains. Not much corn to start with, but we started raising corn later on to feed the cattle. Had a few milk cows to start with, but eventually was all beef cattle.
Chickens, the garden. I was always busy.
You know, that's all you knew. So what else are you gonna do? You know, you've got a place to live. You gotta try and make it work, you know. You don't enjoy everything, but, you know, I'm not sure if there is anything 100% any place. I don't care what you're doing. I'm sure nothing was 100%. You live with your mistakes and you live with your rewards also.
So do you remember the first piece of farm equipment you bought? What was it? Do you remember?
I think a John Deere kickback plow, maybe, 4-bottom.
When did you know or decide that it was time for one of us kids to run a piece of machinery?
Oh, yeah. I think they always knew themselves. We, we were up north one time, and the pasture, I think, was maybe a mile and a half from the farm. All of a sudden, Kevin gets underneath the wheel and drives home. That's the way it was.
How old was he?
Yeah, gee whiz.
You could barely see
Barely.
over the top.
Barely see out. Pretty much the little A was pretty easy to get to know, to run, you know, so that helped quite a bit.
How hard was it to start out on a new farm in a new area?
Oh, I didn't think it was too hard, you know. We had really good neighbors, let's put it that way. Then we went to church at St. Michael's, and you get to know people there. Down at St. Michael's, we had this habit of, after Mass, we'd always stand around maybe 45 minutes and visit and stuff. And I guess when you look back, it was enjoyable times. Now that it's all behind, you know.
We have a neighbor that reminds us every year, Bernards, how they enjoyed that to be together.
It helps to get along with the good neighbors. The Bernhards, Kunzes, you know, the Jacobs, Hubers, you know, the Vetters, all the Vetters were really nice people that we got to know. Was easy, right? Really, you know. Well, I think the most difficult parts was when you had a hailstorm or something like that, you know, and didn't know where the next dollar is going to come from. And somehow you survived. Sometimes you wonder how you survived, but you do, you know.
Well, we had hail 2 years in a row, right? Where we were knocked out completely.
Relied a lot on government payments, I guess you could say.
You just always tried your best next time. Well, I think the hardest for me was when Pat passed away. That was hard. Plus all the other little guys.
Would you say that was one of the toughest times too?
I think so.
Yeah.
It made you, for the longest time, it made you think, why were we picked? Pat was such a worker, and everybody knew it.
Back when I was still at the farm, growing up, my dad used to sell hoists for farm trucks, and I was basically in charge of that, so that would have been an opportunity, I suppose, going someplace and working for somebody else. Kind of envy the guys that are out there now with this modern machinery. They've got good machinery nowadays. That's probably one of the things you would have enjoyed having, but I mean, you did what you did with what you had.
The washer and dryer, that's the one I like the best.
Yeah.
Push a button and that's it. And when I grew up, carry all the water in, you know, to the machines. And we had a lot of clothes to wash.
How did you decide that you needed to build a bigger house?
It was just not big enough. No room for extra beds.
I think it started with trying to add on the house, and that didn't sound like it made any sense.
And then the carpenter come and he said, you don't build onto a house that has been built on before. He said, you might as well start from scratch. And I think he was right. The woodworking, I did all that. And the cupboards, they built the cupboards and I did the finishing. And nowadays, when you build a home, the cupboards are built, everything's ready to put in.
I did all the electrical work and all the plumbing.
We lived in the garage. Do you remember that? What was that like, living in the garage?
Oh, you guys enjoyed it. Could run all over the place.
Was a long summer,
Yeah.
you know.
Wash clothes out of the driveway. And you'd get up in the morning, you looked at everything, and you knew what you had to do that day. And that's not all, but look at all the cooking you had to do. And cleaning chickens. They don't clean chickens no more. They wouldn't eat it. Men and these women come walking with holes all over their pants. I used to sit up till 12 o'clock at night and patch them.
You just did what you had to do, I guess. I don't know. There was no such a thing as taking off Friday afternoons to go fishing, whatever you do nowadays. But I mean, we spend a lot of time on the farm. This time of the year, you know, you needed to get your crop in the ground. Then later on, you had to mow the grass to feed the cattle. And then the harvest came. You had to do that.
I always thought I had to raise kids for Leo and those guys that didn't have it.
Did it get easier as the years went on?
I guess you just automatic that this is my job.
Did you ever think you couldn't afford 11 kids?
Never thought of it. We saved everything. Hand-me-downs. You don't see that no more, did they? They dress their kids with hand-me-downs. And ours all wore. I went one snowsuit that every one of you guys wore when you were little. And we never turned anybody down that come to our place. We fed them.
Just did what you had to do, I guess. I don't really think of anything special. Just borrowed a lot of money to keep going. And, you know, eventually paid it back. You can tell nowadays when you buy groceries that I'm not sure if a guy could still do that.
What meal would you make that you knew everyone would love it?
I think it would be chicken. Fried chicken or chicken and rice.
Who is the pickiest eater in the family?
Dad. He always complains. And I'll say it because that's true.
I suppose I'll have to second the motion. There's things I just don't care for.
He didn't cook. That's why.
What advice do you have for your children and grandchildren to help them succeed?
They have to kind of find their own way, you know, make the best of whatever's presented. Get as much education as they can so you can get your good jobs. And
I think the most important is they should get their school first and then take it from there, what they want to do. And do what you like, not do what somebody says you should do and you don't like. I think I got a lot of my lessons from my mother because I didn't get nowhere. I was always home.
learning to work hard and do a good job what you're doing and help whenever you can. Just seeing all the family grow up and outstanding, you know, having families of their own, you know, those are things I think that a guy will remember the most. Nowadays, we always seem to measure success in dollars and cents, and I'm not sure if that's the right philosophy to use. I think it's the other things that are more important than dollars and cents. You just hope you wake up in the morning, and if you don't, that's tough. That's just the way it is. You hope you earned your heavenly reward somewhere along the line. Live and forget.
You gotta get out and go to church. Do a lot of praying. My ways don't go, then I pray.
Do you ever think how lucky you are?
Sometimes you have to make your luck, I guess. I don't know. Like I said before, there's nothing that's 100%, you know.
You look at everybody and it makes you wonder how lucky we are that we have all. We don't really know everybody, but we love them just like the rest.
Did you ever think 66 years ago that you'd have this many
No,
relatives or family?
I just thought I'd have what God wants me to have.
We're well in our 80s, both Mom and I. Been married for 66 years, so what else can you ask for? God has been good to us.